So I grow food in boxes. I'm a box farmer. We call them our fresh boxes. Here's a little video of the farm, which is, and there's the team waving to everybody. And this is what we grow inside the boxes right now. So I spend every waking moment of my days thinking about lettuce. And on alternative days, I know, on alternative days I think about kale or arugula or spinach, just for variety's sake. And yeah, I need to get out more. And it's enormously rewarding, but I never really thought this is where I would end up. My path to becoming an urban farmer was definitely the road less traveled. I came here as an investor, and I did the usual sort of investor things, which is I went to Stanford, I then went to Harvard, did investment management, and made some really impractical and uncomfortable shoe choices along the way. I hate those shoes, can I tell you? Ugh. You know, my interaction with food really was formed having followed my diplomat parents around the world, where you know, I've lived in 16 countries and I speak 7 languages. And actually, that doesn't really qualify me to do very much other than be a card-carrying omnivore, have pretty fantastic world-class blisters, and have the really cute party trick of being able to land pretty much anywhere and order food and drinks. Travel with me, you won't starve. But then a few years ago, I went back to culinary school. I took some time out of the business world and learned to be a chef, and I was a chef. But really, at the time, I thought it was just a luxurious, wonderful break from the world of number crunching that had been my life up to that date. My interest in food and my knowledge of agriculture was really very poor. And all of that started to change in February of 2013 when I met this remarkable technology company that was changing the face of agriculture not far from here in Millis, Massachusetts. So does this really matter? Well, I think all of us like to believe that having clean, fresh food that is, you know, reliably supplied is important. And we like to believe that in the United States, our food supply is exactly that. And for the most part, that's true. But with the industrialization of our food distribution system and the concentration thereof, it's actually less and less true every day. And the produce industry is enormous. It's $5.4 billion a year, and it's actually controlled by 5 major corporations. So it's definitely industrial, and it's definitely concentrated, which has led to some pretty big issues. The largest of that is water. So we've heard a number of different speakers today talk about water and the fact that it is a true crisis. 70% of the world's water today is used in agriculture. In drought-stricken California, where 75% of our fruits and vegetables come from, the water crisis is serious. And that has real implications for what's happened with the produce industry. Furthermore, the produce industry has kind of given itself an own goal, to use a soccer term, because it has instituted something called triple washing, which uses millions and millions of gallons of water treated with salt and chlorine to give us those wonderful ready-to-eat veggies. So does that mean that our produce supply is then incredibly clean? Well, unfortunately not. Eating raw produce is now the leading cause of food poisoning in the United States. So all of these restaurant closures that you're seeing, it's not eggs or shrimp that's doing it, it's actually eating lettuce. And the other day I was in a supermarket and I saw a little sign at the raw spinach that said, if you're pregnant or you have immune issues, don't eat raw spinach. It turns out that the leaf structure of spinach is incredibly efficient at retaining bacteria, and not even washing actually solves that. Kale is another favorite vegetable and something else I think about on every other day. And, you know, kale is really good for you. It's fantastic. It's a superfood. The problem with kale is that it's also a super absorber, which means that anything that happens to be in the ground or in the water in which it was used to grow, it absorbs it, and then eventually you absorb it. And California farmers in, the desperation of the drought, are actually accepting water that's been left over from fracking. Yikes. Yeah. So unfortunately, people who eat kale 3 times a day, which is not me, and I don't advise that, are giving themselves heavy metal poisoning. Not fun. Then freshness. So because we are growing our vegetables in California or in Arizona and shipping them across the country, it generally means that if you're here on the East Coast, your vegetables are somewhere between 12 and 15 days old. And of course, every day we eat stuff that isn't particularly fresh. But with vegetables, it kind of matters because the nutritional value geometrically declines depending on how long it's been since it was harvested. Then you have carbon. So I think a lot about the carbon impact of meat. And my Meatless Mondays have now gone to Meatless Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays. But even with a plant-based diet, or primarily a plant-based diet, I'm finding it really troubling that our vegetables are refrigerated, trucked, flown, refrigerated again, and all of that carbon is actually hidden, and it's quite enormous. Then there's organic, and I try to buy organic as much as possible. I think it's better for us, of course. But organic doesn't have the reliability or the yield that pesticides and genetically modified organisms really give us. It is something that the green revolution that happened 60 years ago that was enabled by pesticides is called a revolution precisely because it allowed us to fundamentally, dramatically increase food production on this planet. And if we're going to phase out pesticides and we're going to phase out GMOs, we have to come up with other ways that we're going to grow that much food. Which leads me to my final point about what's kind of not working right now with the food distribution system is land use. So 40% of the land on Earth today is used for agriculture. And every day we have more and more instances of human-animal conflict as human beings basically break into wilderness in order to plant more food. If we don't densify and we don't start to bring that food closer to where we are, if we end up with 9 billion people on this planet, we're not going to have any wild animals left. So what are we solving with our lovely little box farms? Well, first of all, water. We use, in one of our containers, 18,000 gallons of water a year. To grow the same amount of food that we grow in one container in the field, you would have to use 46 million gallons of water. This is a big win for us, and a big win really for the planet. Clean. So we wear gloves and lab coats, and we keep our environment very clean. And what that means is that we've tested our greens when they arrive at the store against the store-bought stuff on the shelves. We have thousands of times less bacteria. And we don't triple wash. Our stuff is really very clean. Fresh. So because we grow our product here, and we can really grow in any urban or suburban environment, our product is going to reach your shelves within 24 hours or 48 hours of harvest. That's a big difference from the current food supply. Energy. We're really bad on the energy scorecard, I'm afraid, because our boxes use a lot of electricity. But we buy green energy from the grid just so that we're on the side of the angels. Carbon. So plants really like carbon dioxide. We really like that they like carbon dioxide. And we actually use it as a major component of our growing. And we're talking to major polluters about setting up alongside them so that we can actually draw their carbon dioxide directly. Density. So we spoke about the need to grow more in less space. We are probably the highest density growers of leafy greens in the world. We grow enough in a 320 square foot container to feed 1,000 to 1,500 families a month. So I always get these people who are like, "Oh, can I put one in my backyard?" And I was like, well, probably not unless you want to eat a lot of vegetables. But density matters because resource compression and resource conservation matters. And we do this at 1/3 to 1/10 the cost of other urban farming operations that we've seen out there. I looked at 17 companies before we invested in this one. And then finally, taste. Taste really matters. Very sadly, I think we've become so accustomed to the deflavoring of food as a result of the industrialization of our food distribution system that we've forgotten or we don't know what it should really taste like. And I've actually stood in the supermarkets handing out little sample cups, and people turn to me and go, "What is this?" I said, "Well, it's salad." What did you think it was? So I hope I've given you some insight into how transformative box farming could be, and how it could change our palates, our health, and the way we live on this planet. If any of this has excited or enthused you, please speak to your town leadership, to your local food purveyors about how you can bring high-intensity vertical farming to your communities. And if you donate to conservation or you invest in conservation in any way, hand in hand, you should be looking at high-intensity vertical farming because it has to be part of the solution for how we live and grow and eat food on this planet. And I very much want us all to take charge of localizing and densifying our food supply because it will change the way we eat, the way we live, and the way we take care of this earth. Thank you.